Welcome, everybody. This is a humorous history podcast, and we are the Goofy Historians. Today, we have a great show for you guys, and just wanted to say, please listen all the way to the end to learn about our collaboration plans for this year with other YouTubers. As always, we are not real historians, but we hope this is mostly true and somewhat funny. And remember, our motto is truth when necessary, but humor at all costs. Today, we're going to discover the truth behind Alfred Lord Tennyson. I just call him ALT. Behind ALT's famous Charge of the Light Brigade. And we're going to tell the story, and it really comes down to how bad bosses can ruin your day and get you killed. There's a very colorful host of characters, from Cardigan, a guy who despised his men so much that he actually left every night and went to his yacht to spend the night on his yacht, and all the way to Florence Nightingale, and many others. We'll try not to miss the important ones. But the year is 1854, and the Ottoman Empire is falling apart. They call it the old man, the dying old man, or something
Sick
like
man
that.
of Europe.
Sick man of Europe.
Yeah, he was like a zombie.
It had been around for a long
Walking around, right?
time. It was a zombie, but they joined, and so the Ottoman Empire had been around for all those years. I don't know how long, hundreds of years, but now it was falling apart, and like sharks circling, prey. Russia was on one side, and England and France were on the other side, and that's really what this Crimea War was about. Although there's that side story about the Church of the Nativity.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous, though.
Okay. Well, no, that's the point, though, right?
The
I think.
doors, the key to the door.
Yeah. Let me talk about the Church of the Nativity. Let's get into it, right? Because this is about showing hypocrisy. That's our main goal, if nothing else, is to show arrogance and hypocrisy, right? So this has been last couple times we talked about the Crusades. Now the Crusades are like 300 years in the past, right? I mean, pretty much the Crusades were going on, and the Christian says, "Well, if God's on our side, why do we keep losing?" Right? So finally, they said, "Let's just hang up the Crusades and give it back to the Islamic forces, and just have us go visit our churches when we want to," which was exactly the situation before the Crusades. But there's the Church of the Nativity, right? Where Jesus was born, they put like a little church over it, and now the Byzantians had the Eastern Orthodox Church had the keys to the front door to the church, but the Catholics had to come in the back door. They had the key only to the back door.
All right, let me get this straight. So the church has at least two doors.
At least two doors, yeah.
Why? Okay, when I was growing up, the churches were open. You don't lock the churches. Why do you need a key to the doors? Just go in.
Well, that's because you're usually not sharing your church with another denomination. There's only one Church of the Nativity, and both the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox want it. You'd think if they were both really Christian, right? We're supposed to be tolerant and loving, and not being uptight with people you don't like, but I've never known a Christian to actually follow those precepts. So they were pretty persnickety about who got to come in the front door. So the Catholic Church complained, and to the King of France, who was supposed to be the Lord Protector of the Catholic Church in the Holy Lands, right? And so he talks to the Ottoman Empire and says, "We want the keys to the front door." and so the Ottoman Empire says, "I don't care, right? Take them. They're yours." But in doing that, he pissed off the Eastern Orthodox, which was at that time reporting to Russia. And so Russia says, you know, if you're going to take the keys to take the keys from the front door away from us, we're going to go and attack Crimea. And like you go, what a non sequitur. That doesn't, the two don't have anything to do with each other, right?
They have everything to do
why
with
do you-
access to the Black Sea.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that, like so much, a lot of times religion gets a bad name just because politicians are using it for their own purposes. I mean, who knows? Probably the priest and the Catholic priest and the Orthodox priest were actually getting along, and they were all like you said, maybe the court doors weren't even locked, right? They were just coming and going and having tea together, you know, at Starbucks outside the Church of the Holy Nativity. And it was only the politicians who were making a big thing out of it.
Okay, so
But
now
when Russia says, since you took the key away from us, we're going to attack the Crimea, they did. And you're right. It's because the Ottoman Empire is falling apart, and they wanted the Crimea because that's right on the Black Sea, and Russia has never had access to the Mediterranean. That's always been their goal, right? So if they can take the Crimea, and also they're trying to get into, or the England thinks they're trying to get into India. So between India and the old Ottoman Empire, the British says, no, you can't. We don't care about the, we don't care. England doesn't care about the keys, right? They're Protestant. They don't care about the keys to a Catholic church in the Holy Land. But they get together with France, and they get together with the Ottoman Empire, who's still an Islamic country. So you have a situation where you have like a Protestant country, because at this time in the 50s, happens in 1854. Countries still identify, this is before really the separation of church and state in Europe, right? You're either a Protestant country, or you're a Catholic country, or you're an Eastern Orthodox country, or you're an Islamic country, right? You don't get that separation of church and state that we think is so easy for us to think about now. So the Protestants and the Catholics and the Muslims get together, form an alliance to fight the Russian Orthodox to get them out of the Crimea.
Right. So those were the belligerents. So we have Russia on one side, everybody else on the other. And now there's the war. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is that you do, this is the first time you have
right.
quote unquote Christians fighting with, now this is like I said, 300 years after the Crusades. It's just the opposite. Now you're getting the Islamic forces and the Christian forces fighting together against what used to be the Byzantine Empire, right? So
right.
it's kind of an interesting twist of fate.
No, it's totally interesting, but we got to get to the charge of the Light Brigade. So we've got the belligerents laid out, and we've got the reasons why, and everybody was freaking out. They're like, shit, we should be on the Russia side. Shouldn't be joining. Yeah, everybody's freaking out, but it didn't matter. There's a war.
This is a practical person. Yeah, it's geopolitics.
Right. So we're going to get to the specific battle here real quick. And what I just think I want to point out is that we could do a whole show, a whole podcast on military blunders. And there's a ton of them. And all through the history of war, there's always been friendly fire, even when there wasn't firearms. There's always mistakes, and they have this thing called the fog of war, which leads to most of them. There was no fog of anything. It was completely incompetence. I just wanted to point that out. It wasn't there might have been one place, I'll chime in on that, it was kind of foggy, but other than that, it was just bad bosses.
Bad bosses all the way down. It's something. It's very similar to the Battle of the Crater, right?
It is. Yeah.
The same thing happened. It's just you have a series of bad bosses all the way down, and even though you have the best troops, the best engineers on the ground, right? If you don't have a good boss, you're going to end up like Betamax and VHS, right? you're going to go extinct, right?
All right. So the Siege of Sevastopol is kind of the last battle of the war, or the Battle of Balaclava. That's just
Balaclava. Yeah.
Let's all say it together. Balaclava. we'll wait. Okay. Oh, you know what would be fun? We could actually, if there's anybody listening right now, I want you to turn your volume up to 10 on Alexa and see if we order anything from Amazon during this show. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Siege of Alexa. Order. What should we order? Order greatcourses.com. Okay, sorry, got sidetracked. The Siege of Sevastopol, the Battle of Balaclava. Here we are. Here's the British forces facing off against the Russians. And what happens?
Okay, let's talk about, so at this point they're outside of Sevastopol, but they're starting up the siege, or they're close to, at this point, starting up the siege. And they're in a situation where there's a valley, and in this valley, at this point, at the start of the things, the valley is a mile long.
Valley of Death.
The valley, well, will become the Valley of Death. Before that was probably a valley
of beautiful daisies
and wine. But, and then of course the valley, so there's, and it's like a half mile across, a mile long. On both sides of the valley, there's Russian troops and cannons. And at the end of the valley, there's Russian troops and cannons. And at the far northern end, I guess, or the southern end, there's the Light Brigade and the Heavy Brigade, right? But then behind,
I want to chime in here, because when people hear this, especially if they haven't heard this story before, and they hear Light Brigade, it's light, as in it doesn't weigh a lot. It's not heavy. It doesn't have armor. What it isn't is lights. There were no lights. So light.
There were no lights. It like sparkly. It wasn't like sparkly, right? Like,
well, actually, it was kind of. Oh shit! We got to talk about the uniforms. Back up.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to when we talking about the commanders.
The freaking uniforms. They were beautiful.
Playing the scene of the lead of the ground. So they have the Light Brigade and the Heavy Brigade, and then up on a bigger hill, right? So it's behind the Light Brigade and the Heavy Brigade, which is looking over the whole valley, is the general of the English, the head general,
Raglan.
Raglan, and he's head of the whole thing. And the last time he was ever in a war was when he fought Napoleon at Waterloo, which is like 45 years ago. Oh, shit. And England hasn't been in a European war since then. They've had like little wars, but they've had
no practice in war. You know what sucks is I was gonna say that America has been in wars for like 200 of our 240 years. It's awful. But I guess we're well practiced.
Yeah, but this is the first time.
He calls the enemy the French. This guy he should not be anywhere near a battle. He's senile. He doesn't even know who he's fighting.
Doesn't know who he's fighting, right? So yeah, the last time he fought a war, right, it was against the French, and the Russians was on his side. So he still calls the enemy the French, right? And so it's confusing everybody. His own command, when he's talking about the French, because they're thinking French allies, he's thinking French is a synonym for enemy. I mean, once he went out of his tent and there was a bunch of French cavalry riding by, and he just had a flashback of the Napoleonic Wars, and he threw out his little pistol and threw himself into a ditch and was going to start shooting at him. And his own little entourage had to stop him from attacking his own allies. So this guy is
that's the first problem. Bureaucracy should have done some error correction and just eliminated this.
Well, but in times of peace, you have peacetime generals, right? I mean, it happens a lot. It takes like a first year or so before you get rid of the peacetime generals and actually gets into someone who knows how to do something beyond go to have cocktails with the boss and the wives, right? But this guy's even worse, right? He doesn't even know who he's fighting. But anyways, he's up on the hill. He thinks he's never commanded even in the Napoleonic Wars, he was a young man. He actually lost an arm in that war.
Right.
But he never actually commanded troops in battle. So he's like a rookie. He's like a 67-year-old rookie up on a hill thinking he's gonna take on this battle. And you have
But
to remember
actually, he
another
was
thing about the Napoleon, these wars, these officers did not earn their rank, they bought it.
right.
So if you were, and you had to, all you needed was be royalty and have enough money, and you bought yourself a rank.
Right. And the reason was, I was going to say a couple things here real quick. So they purchased themselves a rank into the army primarily so they could have later, so their ancestors could see the portrait that was drawn of them
With all the fringes, right?
all the fringes and stuff, and it would be placed in their where they lived,
Their
Downton Abbey,
manners, right? Yeah.
Downton Abbey style, right?
Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh, yeah. What was funny, like Queen Victoria was the queen at that time, and initially she had herself painted with a painting of her in cardigan, right? And after this battle, she actually had him painted out of the.
yeah,
No. She had herself painted out of the portrait. Because
all right. Well, anyway, Lord
represent-
Raglan is having
related to him.
Lord Raglan. Let's get back to the day.
Yeah.
He's very lucid today. He knows what he wants to do. He has a solid plan. He wants to attack specific cannons on the high ground. So let's take it from there.
Right. So if you look at the situation, he's up on the hill. He can see the left and the right and the end, right? And he sees that if he can get up on the right side, right, which was actually his cannons initially, those cannons were taken over by the Russians. So he wants the light brigade to go up on that, which is close to him, right, and sort of enfilade, go on the side and take them one cannon at a side. He goes up with his soldiers, and the Russian soldiers on the hill actually know, because they're reasonably intelligent generals, they're actually trying to get the cannons out of there. They're trying to move the cannons away before Raglan sends his troops up and takes them, right? So It's a perfect, right at this point, Raglan is actually lucid, and this is the only time during the battle he's lucid.
So that was a great command, but the problem is it gets lost. Oops, sorry about that. It gets lost. So the next person we're going to talk about is Lord Lucan. Now, Lord Lucan is pretty colorful character as well. The most important thing I think we could say about him is he hates Lord Cardigan.
Right. So let me say, which is Lucan. Lord Lucan is in charge of the cavalry. He has
both of them, light and heavy.
The light and the heavy cavalry. And there's also the infantry, but Raglan at this point had completely lost his infantry. He didn't know where it was, right?
Right.
So
that's
he's like
crazy
sending
part.
messages out to try to find the infantry and bring them up. But so he wants to send a message to Logan, right?
Lucan.
Lord Logan.
Lord Lucan.
Lord Lucan, right? He wants to send a message to Lord Lucan to say, take your light brigade, go up on the hill and take the cannon. And when the infantry gets here, if they ever do, they'll be in support, right? That's sort of the idea. He says the infantry is on its way and will support you. And so when Lucan gets the command, he thinks it means to wait for the infantry.
And nothing happens. And up there on top of the mountain, Lord Raglan is freaking out. He's like, why aren't they moving?
So why aren't they moving? And okay, so Cardigan, I have to tell him. So Lucan has both the heavy and the light, but Cardigan is the commander of the light brigade, right? And
so Cardigan is the craziest of all characters. He's the one that goes to his yacht at night and sleeps. And he's the one that they have the sweater vest named after.
Yeah, the little button down.
He was the Kanye West of the 1850s, he was like really into designing clothes. He would have been really a good influencer and figuring out what was in style.
Yeah,
That was his
unfortunately,
only
this day
skill, I
and time.
think.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing, if you about these regimental or commanders, the commanders of the army, if you buy your rank, right, you also get to dress your troops, right? So
Nice.
this was perfect for Cardigan, right? So he dressed his light brigade in the most flamboyant, you know, red with plumes and thrills. And the other thing you have to remember, the light brigade means light. They didn't have any armor, and they didn't have any um,
Guns.
they didn't have any guns. They didn't have any
They
guns
have
at all.
sword.
They had a sword, and what's even more ridiculous, they had the what do you call it? The thing,
Oh,
the lance.
like a jousting thing.
Yeah, they had a jousting.
That works great against cannons.
Right. So you have these he had dressed his troops up with this really bright red with plumes, and they had a lance like they
A
were going to go
sword.
jousting,
You know what? Let's just
and
take
a
a step
sword.
back for just a second and talk about the English. They were so arrogant at that time. It was amazing. So they were sending their troops all over the planet, from the Arctic to the rubber plantations, and they all wore like the same basic uniform. They're like, you guys are tough. Yeah, it'll be cold, but you'll have a stiff upper lip. They were so arrogant. I'm surprised that they just didn't get massacred all over the globe, but they didn't. And now we speak English.
Well,
Okay.
they finally did, and it started with the Americas, right? Because we learned how to fight like the Indians, right? We learned native, right? You blend in with the environment, and when the British, it was the same thing, right? So if you were a captain, you designed your uniform for style, right? It's better to look good and feel good, and your troops wore that uniform no matter where they were in the world, right? I mean, in India, or the tropics, or up in
Could you
the
imagine? I would rather
Tibet.
be in the Arctic and maybe you could find something to put over you. But if you're in the jungle wearing that, you just are ridiculous. You're ridiculous anywhere they go.
Yeah, I mean
All
the
right, let's
English.
talk about Captain
Yeah,
Nolan,
yeah,
because this is the fog of war part, I
they
think.
were willfully ridiculous. I mean, they went out of their way to be ridiculous, right? But
All right, let's get back to the
anyway, so
battle.
this is the story. You had to remember. So Cardigan, and also Cardigan thinks even though they're dress night, he doesn't associates with them. He goes to his yacht every night. The captain of the yacht, I think they call him, or the general of the yacht. And in his yacht, he has his own chef. He has a butler, right?
A butler. Okay, so he has a butler. Why is he getting company on the yacht? So the butler like opens the door?
Well, probably this was it Raglan comes down once in a while. Maybe he's expecting the queen. I mean, these are people who meet with the queen, right? So I
Oh
mean, I'm
Lord.
sure he met the queen on his yacht when he was back in England, right? So he has his butler, and when his waiter, this is how awful this guy is, right? He had like a Indian waiter or something, and when the waiter didn't bring him the right flavor of wine, he had him given like 20 lashes on the back, because I mean,
They just
imagine that
despise
not
those
getting a
people.
tip, right? I mean, that's the worst we would do, right? You don't give someone a tip. He actually gave, so he was giving his people, and he gave his own men lashes, right? He says, if I don't lash my men, I'm going to lose my army. Well, he lost his army anyways.
All right, so this guy, Captain Nolan, reports all the way up to Lord Raglan. And Captain Nolan, what can you say about Captain Nolan? There's a lot to say. He was hot-headed. He was the best cavalryman. He didn't like the way that Cardigan or Lucan was handling the cavalry. Thought they were too timid. So Lord Raglan's up on the hill freaking out because there's no action happening. He had sent that order and nothing was happening because they were waiting for the infantry that never arrived. So
which he still hasn't found. He doesn't know where his infantry is. He has
I don't
people
know.
scouring. Yeah, no, the other thing about this stupid thing is they knew nothing. They had no maps. When they showed up on the Crimean shore, right? They had no idea. They had no maps, right? They sent out no spies. They didn't speak any of the languages, right? So they were bumbling around in the dark, totally blind.
Okay, so Captain Nolan gets the second order from Raglan. And a couple things. When you give an order, you're supposed to have it written down, which he did, and then tell him what the order was verbally in case the other person that you're giving it to
That's a
needs
question.
clarification. So anyway, Captain Nolan's running around up there. He had given the order to somebody else and told him everything, and then
A professional messenger.
a professional
Yeah.
messenger then changed his mind, gave the order to Captain Nolan, and didn't explain anything to him. And Captain Nolan took off and
Well, yeah, I think
Cardigan.
he may have. I could see Raglan about to give him oral commands, right? Here's the written command, and this is and Nolan was on his horse.
No, it was already gone.
And Raglan's going.
That's what happened. We figured it out. This is really what happened.
Because Raglan's a really good
Horseman.
I guess he can shoot down that hill in like 1 minute flat, but he's completely hot-headed. And the other thing you have to remember is that he totally despises Lucan, right? Because he thinks he should have Lucan's job, right? Lucan's down there going, "Oh well, I'll raid for the cavalry. I'm gonna."
None of these people would talk to each other. If they were in the same room, they wouldn't have talked to each other. Anyway, they hated each other that bad. So Captain Nolan gives the message to Lord Cardigan, and that's the only thing he did right. He gave the message. After that, everything was foobarred, as they would say in World War II, because it was unclear. Lord Cardigan's like, this is crazy. You don't want us to go down this canyon, because that's where Nolan was pointing. He waved his hands, go down the canyon to the Valley of Death, when actually he was supposed to go up and take the cannons on the hill.
Yeah. Right. Well, the confusion part is like Lucan thinks that this is the first command, right? He doesn't know that this is a follow-up of the first command, right? Which just says, don't wait for the infantry, attack, right? So he's running down, he says, here's the orders, and then Lucan doesn't realize that this is a follow-up to the first command. Right. And he says, you want me to attack? Who do you want me to attack, right? And he says, well, I will take the cannons, but Lucan can't see any cannon because he's in the valley. He doesn't know what's up on the two sides of the valley, right? He doesn't know that he doesn't even know there's cannons up there that he's supposed to take. And so he did what was correct. He says, what cannons do you want me to take, right? I mean, where, what, And that's when Nolan says, he's like, there's your enemy. Go. Right? It's like, are you so stupid that you don't know where the enemy is? Right? And so that's when Lord Lucan says, well, okay. And then he takes the command to Cardigan, who's the charge of the Light Brigade. And he says, go take the cannons and down at the edge of the valley. And Cardigan goes, well, no, that's friggin' insane. We can't go down we can't go down the valley.
Cannons on 3 sides.
We're going to be at 3 sides, right? Because they know there's soldiers up there, and they have like weapons. It's going to be a crossfire, and that's when Lucan says, "What do you want me to say?" It was one of those. What do you want me to say? That's the orders. Do it, right? And what's supposed to happen is that. So Cardigan's supposed to take the Light Brigade up on the hill, but Lucan's telling him to go down the Valley of Death, and then he's supposed to follow up with his Heavy Brigade. And actually, Lucan himself was going to follow up with the Heavy Brigade. So you send out the Light Brigade really fast, and then the heavy brigade would come, and then hopefully the infantry would show up at some point, right? Uh, so that
They
was
take off. The light brigade was
the
like,
light
all right,
brigade.
let's
So at this
go.
point, Cardigan actually says, "Well, if that's the order, that's the order." You know, I think it's stupid, but he takes the order. He gets his light brigade, and the funny thing is, this is like parade for him. Remember, these people don't know. The last time they had any experience was in like the
Well,
Napoleonic, right, which was
well,
after this.
they're about to get some
I mean,
experience.
the American Revolutionary War. So he lines his troops up like in escalon order, right? So you have like they're like marching. They're like on parade, right? It's not like you see like the Battle of Custer at Little Bighorn with him and the rifle, you know, shooting while he's riding, or the Indians shooting behind them, right? Where they're riding and fighting at the same time. No, this is not that. This is totally on parade. These people are marching in escalon. Besides, they can't even shoot. All they have is a saber, right? And like um, so they're marching, and it's a mile down this valley where they can't defend themselves. And not only can they not defend themselves, they're absolutely making themselves a target. Right? It's like, shoot us. And there's 666 of these men on horseback with you know, a sword, and I keep forgetting what that's called when you
I guess a
joust.
lance or
A
something.
lance, right? A lance. That is so ridiculous. What are they going to do with the lance?
So they take
could
off, and
like
they
throw it as
are
a
like
spear or
going
something.
slowly, and they get like almost all the way there, and then they go into a gallop. But by that time, the cannons had been blasting them on both sides. So by the time they get to the cannons at the far end, they've already lost a bunch of people, and then they have a little skirmish there. Lord Cardigan actually, oh shit, we forgot to talk about Nolan. Nolan gets killed immediately, and we don't know whether he was trying to turn them around or stop them, or he was just wanted to be in front. But anyway, so Nolan's dead. A bunch of the light brigade is dead. They get to the cannons. There's Russians right behind the cannons. They have to turn and run. But before that even happened, Lord Cardigan just turned around and freaking rode right back through the valley of death. He's like, I got you guys here. It's not my job to do the fighting.
Because Cardigan's on a time scale, right? He has tea time on his yacht,
Yeah,
right?
he just
At
got them
1:15, and it's already like 12:30. He's got to turn around and get back to the yacht, right? So
But in all
right,
seriousness, they
but
get
he does take them all the way to
right. At least he did that.
take to the cannon. He gets there and goes back down the valley.
And then
But
it wasn't long before the ones that were left turned around and followed him right back down the canyon to get shot at again by the cannons. So it was just a complete massacre. Well, it wasn't a complete massacre. Of the 666, 110 got killed, 161 got wounded, 400 horses got killed, which means they had to walk back. Yeah, it was
yeah, I
a
feel more
mess.
sorry for the horses because they didn't sign up for this, right? But yeah, so 115 of them died on the way, and then a lot got. Imagine being wounded, right? What are you gonna do? You're gonna walk back wounded, or just lie down and just probably just wish you were dead, or crawl
Well, a
back?
lot of people did wish they were dead. So the Crimea War went on for a while after that. That was just kind of like the last battle, but it was a bloody conflict. And what was so sad is that, like most wars throughout history up until modern times, um, the casualties were primarily from people getting sick or wounded and dying, not from in battle. And this was no different, except that it was statistically insane how many people. It was like 400,000 got killed, but 350 of them died of sickness.
Yeah. So let me see. So yeah, almost, if you consider both the whole battle, right? The Russians and England and its allies, about 650,000. Can you imagine that? 650,000 people died,
Yeah, it
right?
was ridiculous. There was no reason for it. And
And 80% of them, over 80% of them died of disease, right?
it
So
was
500
horrible. I want to say something
500,000 people
about
died of disease.
I want to say something about Florence Nightingale. Okay, so Florence Nightingale is another character because we're going to wrap this up here. She's a very colorful character. She came from England, obviously. She was an aristocrat. She went into nursing, studied nursing in Germany, and her family was freaking out. They're like, "Why are you being a nurse?" Ah.
That's because you could a woman couldn't study nursing in England, right? She had to go
So
to Germany.
she gets
Medical school.
she gets herself sent to Crimea, and she goes to the hospital where that is, and it's appalling. It's just like this barracks where just people are dying. And the fact of the matter is, she went in, she tried to separate the ones that were wounded from the ones that were sick, and she tried to get it cleaned up and stuff. But the truth of the matter was, her claim to fame of cleanliness and stuff came later. The Crimea hospital, whatever, it was a nightmare. You would have been better off if you were wounded to just stay there in the field and try to hide at night or something. Because if you went to her freaking Florence Nightingale's hospital, you were going to die. There were people, thousands of people were dying every day. They didn't know what it was. So everybody thinks that Florence Nightingale was this wonderful. She wasn't a scientist. She was an aristocrat. She did have her heart in the right place, but it wasn't until years later they kind of put two and two together. Do I have that right or not? I mean, I'm all
Yeah, I
for
mean,
Florence
this was
Nightingale.
before, right? This was before germ theory, right? But
Decades before.
it was decades before Germany and Lister and all those people discovering about germs and Viskenhurt. But she was the first one who actually tried to do something. And what she did do is that initially the place was actually over a cesspool. They put and the soldiers were like right next, and there was no ventilation, right? So she did get the wounded and separated them so that one wasn't right next to another one, right? And she opened the windows so there was some ventilation, and she cleaned up, and gave them proper. She actually gave them proper food.
Yeah, they loved her. They loved her all the way until like the next day when they died.
Yeah, and she took care of the dead after they died. They didn't leave them lying around there. And the big thing, like you said, she separated the wounded from the people with cholera. Before, if you got like shot with a little musket ball or some shrapnel or something, you were going to be lying right, because odds are, right, 80% of them died of disease, right? There's a chances that you're going to be lying in the same cot as someone with cholera or typhus or something, right?
Exactly. That's what I said. Just take your chances. Dig that musket out with your own knife in the field. Chances are you'll be better off. Okay, so
there is. So if you got wounded, right, there's a 50% chance you would survive after she showed up. So, your odds went up a little bit.
All right.
So she did something, but this was way before, actual modern medicine.
Right. Yeah. Good for her. She gets a medal, and people do love her. And there's like nurses holiday is the Florence Nightingale holiday. She's awesome. Okay, but the other characters were not so awesome. What a friend of mine, his wife wrote a book called Bossholes. So I want to give her credit if I could remember her name, which I can't. But somebody wrote a book called Bossholes, and I want to use that term here because that's what these guys were. So I want to just say something real quick before we finish this up. If you're a boss, it's a really important job. That's why you're the boss. So don't be a meathead, because if you're incompetent, you could at best ruin somebody's day, at worst get somebody killed.
Yeah. So this disaster could have been prevented. So many, if any of them, if Cardigan would have said, no, that's a stupid order, right? We're not going to take our troops down the valley of death, right? Just like Lucan, right? After he saw what happened to the Light Brigade, you never hear about the charge of the Heavy Brigade because they didn't go, right? He says, and he even said, like, why didn't you follow up? he followed up, right? And Count Lucan goes, at
What's the point?
why? What's the point? At that point, what's the point? So someone should have said that at the beginning, right? That's what Cardigan should have said. No, what would be the point of that? There's no point to that, right? What's going to happen? They're going to fire you? You
And the
know,
rest,
I
and
mean,
these
the
guys,
royalty.
all of them except for Nolan, who died, they spent the rest of, and it didn't even bother their career that much. They still got their portrait in their Downton Abbey house somewhere, I'm certain. They argued about it the rest of their lives, and they ended up blaming everything on Nolan, which is convenient, because at the end of the day, I agree with them. Freaking Nolan should not have done that. That was dumb. So anyway, I don't know, but I do want to say that we're going to put a couple links in the description below for greatcourses.com. And I also
Yeah,
wanted to,
there's one particular great course. I forgot who gives it, but it's actually called what's it called? Uh, Blunders,
military
famous
blunders.
famous
So
military blunders,
we'll
and
put
this was
the,
certainly one of them.
definitely, it was a military blunder, but it was no fog of war. So we'll put great courses in the description below. And also, we're going to do some collaboration with other YouTubers, like I had said before. So look, look for a collaboration. Our first one probably will be with Haley Beckel. So check out her channel. She does folklore and food. She's amazing. So we'll put the link there in the description. Check her channel out. And we will be back soon. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. Bye for now.